I never thought I'd be that girl who settled, you know? But here I am, Clara, 32, and honestly, looking back, I should have seen it coming. We all have that little voice in our head telling us when something's off, but sometimes we get so caught up in the idea of being with someone, anyone, that we ignore all the warning signs. When I first met Nolan, he wasn't exactly what I had in mind. I'd just gone through a messy breakup with Chad, this gorgeous investment guy who, yeah, had some issues with commitment, but at least he was exciting. Nolan was safe, reliable, the kind of guy my mom would love, which should have been my first clue something was wrong. He pursued me hard, always texting, planning these thoughtful dates, remembering little things I mentioned once, almost desperate. Looking back on it, between us, I was at that point where all my friends were getting engaged or married. My biological clock wasn't just ticking, it was practically screaming. So when Nolan proposed after just 10 months, I said yes. He wasn't bad looking, had a stable job, and seemed absolutely crazy about me. Plus, he came from a good family and had this really nice apartment. I figured I could do worse, right? My best friend Rachel saw right through it, though. Clara, do you actually love him or just the idea of being married? She asked me at my bachelorette party after I'd had a few too many drinks and was going on about how my ex, Ryan, was the one that got away. I brushed her off, but deep down, I knew she was onto something. The wedding was beautiful, I made sure of that. I spent months planning every detail, and Nolan just nodded and smiled while writing checks. That's one thing I'll give him, he's never been cheap with me. Our honeymoon in the Bahamas was exactly what I wanted, and when we got back, he surprised me with a new car. Nothing too fancy, but still, it was brand new and all mine. Life settled into this routine after that. Nolan goes to work at his office job, comes home, asks about my day at the firm where I handle client accounts. He listens to me complain about my coworkers, especially this witch Vanessa who's always trying to take credit for my work. He makes dinner most nights because, honestly, I'm usually too tired. Then we watch whatever show I'm into at the moment before bed. Rinse and repeat. It's comfortable, safe, predictable, and it's slowly killing me inside. Don't get me wrong, Nolan's a good guy, like, genuinely good in that boring way. He remembers anniversaries without being reminded. He deals with all the bills and boring adult stuff. He never complains when I go out with the girls or spend too much on shoes. He even gets along with my parents, which is more than I can say for any of my exes, but there's no spark, you know? I look at him sometimes while he's doing something totally normal like brushing his teeth or checking his emails, and I think, is this really it? Is this what I signed up for forever? Meanwhile, I see Rachel and my other friends posting these amazing photos with their partners, weekend getaways, fancy restaurants, thoughtful gifts, and Nolan's idea of romance is ordering my favorite takeout. That's when Tucker started at our firm, tall, confident, with this smile that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. He gets my jokes, challenges me intellectually, and actually has interesting things to say about the world. We started having lunch together, then coffee breaks, then drinks after work with the team, though mostly it was just us by the end of the night. Nothing has happened between us. I'm not a cheater, but I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it. Tucker makes me feel alive in a way Nolan never has. He gets my ambition, my dreams beyond just being someone's wife. When I'm with Tucker, I remember the girl I used to be, the one who had plans, who wanted to travel and experience life before settling down. The girl who wanted a partner, not a provider. The worst part? I look at Nolan, who does everything right on paper, and I feel nothing. Well, nothing except resentment that I could have done so much better, that I settled for stability instead of passion. That I'm stuck in this life I'm not even sure I wanted while he gets to be with someone way out of his league. I know how that sounds, but it's how I feel. Every time I see a couple actually in love, like, genuinely can't keep their hands off each other in love, I get this knot in my stomach. Because I know that's not us, never was, really, and probably never will be. Rachel called me last week freaking out about her boyfriend Jake. They've been together about a year, and he's starting to talk about moving in together. I don't know, she kept saying. He's great, but something feels off. Is that normal? Did you feel that way with Nolan? If she only knew, when Rachel called yesterday, I was in the bathroom doing my hair. Nolan was supposed to be at work until late, some project he'd been stressing about all week. Rachel was still going on about Jake, and whether their relationship had long-term potential. Look, Rachel, listen to me, I said, leaning closer to the mirror to fix my mascara. Remember what I always tell you, don't settle for just anyone. That's the mistake I made. Rachel was quiet on the other end. Seriously, I continued, getting more worked up as I thought about my own situation. Who knows who else I could have had? Nolan was my very last resort, and now look at where it's made me end up. I went on, venting all my frustrations about my marriage. How Nolan pays for everything, but has no ambition beyond his comfortable office job. How he's so obsessed with Me, but has no idea who I really am, how I sometimes lie awake at night, wondering what life would have been like if I'd just waited for someone better. You deserve passion, I told Rachel. You deserve someone who challenges you and excites you. Not just provides for you. After I hung up, I finished getting ready and headed to the living room to watch some TV before Nolan got home. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, Nolan was standing in the doorway looking at me with this strange expression. Not angry, exactly, but empty, like something behind his eyes had just switched off. Hey, I said, stretching. You're home early, how was work? Fine, he said, his voice flat. He didn't move from the doorway. Everything okay? I asked, feeling suddenly uneasy. Nolan's usually so predictable. Comes in, kisses me on the cheek, asks about my day, starts dinner. This silent, statue-like version was new, just tired, he muttered finally, then walked past me to the bedroom without another word. The next few days were weird. Nolan was quiet, distant. He stopped asking about my day, stopped making dinner, stopped sleeping in our bed, claiming he didn't want to disturb me when he had to get up early. I figured he was stressed about work or something, but when I asked, he just shrugged and said everything was fine. Men, right? They always say things are fine when they're clearly not, then expect us to read their minds. I decided to give him space to work through whatever man problem he was having. Meanwhile, I spent more time at the office, where at least Tucker appreciated my company. By the weekend, though, I'd had enough of the silent treatment. Nolan was sitting at the kitchen table staring at his coffee, like it held the secrets of the universe when I finally confronted him. Okay, what is going on with you? I demanded. You've been acting weird all week. Nolan looked up at me, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. It wasn't anger or sadness, it was like recognition, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. We should sit down and talk, he said quietly. We are sitting, I pointed out, trying for humor. He didn't smile. Clara, I was home early on Tuesday. I heard your phone call with Rachel, the blood drained from my face. Tuesday. The bathroom, Rachel. Oh no. What are you talking about? I stammered, buying time while my mind raced. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Nolan said, his voice eerily calm. I heard you tell Rachel not to settle like you did. That I was your last resort, that you're unhappy with where you ended up. I opened my mouth to deny it, then closed it again. How much had he heard? What could I say that would fix this? It's not what you think, I tried, reaching for his hand across the table. He pulled away before I could touch him. I was just joking. With Rachel. You know how we are, always being dramatic about everything. Don't, his voice was sharp now. Don't lie to me on top of everything else. I'm not lying, I protested, forcing tears to my eyes. They always worked on Nolan before. I love you, you know I love you. Do I? He asked, looking straight at me, because from what I heard, you settled. For me. You think you could have done better. You're taking it all out of context, I insisted, the tears flowing freely now. I was just having a bad day and venting. You know I didn't mean any of it. Nolan was quiet for a long moment, just looking at me with those eyes that seemed to see everything. I've been thinking about this all week, he finally said. Going over our entire relationship in my head, and you know what? It makes sense. The way you never seem that excited to see me. The way you compare me to your exes, the way you're always on your phone when we're together. That's not fair, I said, switching tactics. If you had a problem with me, you should have said something instead of spying on my private conversations. I wasn't spying, he said calmly. I came home early to surprise you, because I got that promotion I've been working toward. I was going to take you out to celebrate, the promotion, the one he'd been stressing about for months. The one that would mean more money, more security. For us, for me. Well, congratulations, I said weakly. Clara, Nolan said, ignoring my attempt at a diversion. I don't think this marriage was the right decision for either of us. My heart started pounding. Was he really going there? Over one stupid conversation? You don't mean that, I said, reaching for his hand again. This time he let me take it, but his fingers remained limp in mine. We can work through this. I'll do better. We can go to counseling or something. It's not about doing better, he said, gently pulling his hand away. It's about the fact that you don't love me. Maybe you never did, and I deserve someone who does. I do love you, I insisted, panic rising in my chest. This couldn't be happening. What would I do? Where would I go? No, Nolan said, standing up. You don't, and I think we both know that. Something inside me snapped. All the fear and guilt transformed instantly into rage. Who was he to judge me? To throw away everything I'd built over one moment of weakness? Fine, I shouted, standing up so quickly my chair toppled backward. You want the truth? Yes, I settled for you. I could have had anyone, but I chose you. And this is how you repay me? By throwing a tantrum the minute things get hard? Nolan didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice to match mine, just looked at me with a mixture of sadness. And, was that pity? You think you can find someone better than me? I continued, unable to stop myself now. Good luck with that. You're nothing special, Nolan. I was the best thing that ever happened to you, and you're throwing it all away. I'm not throwing anything away, he said quietly. I'm just finally seeing what was never really there. Forget you, I screamed, grabbing my purse from the counter. I'm leaving. When I come back, you better have figured out how stupid you're being. I stormed out, slamming the door behind me. In the car, I called Rachel, crying so hard I could barely get the words out. Nolan and I had a huge fight, I sobbed. He overheard me talking to you the other day. Can I stay with you for a bit? Rachel was quiet for a moment. Of course, she finally said, though something in her voice sounded off. You know you're always welcome. I spent the weekend at Rachel's, waiting for Nolan to call or text, begging me to come home. He didn't. Rachel was weirdly distant too, asking questions about what exactly Nolan had overheard, and seeming less sympathetic than usual. By Sunday night, I was starting to worry. Maybe you should call him, Rachel suggested, as we sat on her couch with wine, clear the air. Why should I call him? I demanded. He's the one who overreacted. Rachel gave me a long look. Did he, though? If he heard you say he was your last resort, whose side are you on? I snapped. Yours, always, Rachel said quickly. I'm just saying, maybe try to see it from his perspective. I ignored her advice and went to bed angry. Monday morning, I woke up to a text from Nolan. We need to talk about next steps. Please let me know when you'll be home to discuss. Next steps? What was that supposed to mean? I went to work, distracted and irritable. Tucker noticed immediately, inviting me for coffee in the break room. You seem off today, he said, his eyes concerned. Everything okay? For a moment, I considered telling him everything. Imagine the sympathy in his eyes, the way he might take my hand, tell me I deserved better. But something held me back. Just having a rough morning, I said instead. Thanks for checking on me. The day dragged on endlessly. I kept checking my phone, half expecting Nolan to send a more apologetic message. Nothing. By late afternoon, I was starting to get nervous. What if he was serious? What would that mean for me? I left work early and stopped by our apartment. Nolan's car was in its usual spot. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door. He was sitting at the kitchen table again, a stack of papers in front of him. When he looked up, his eyes were tired but calm. Hi, I said, trying for casual. I got your text, thanks for coming, he said formally, like I was a colleague, not his wife. We need to talk about how we're going to handle the separation. Separation? I repeated, my voice rising. Are you serious? Over one stupid comment? It wasn't one comment, Clara. Nolan said with surprising firmness. It was a moment of honesty in a relationship built on lies. I've been thinking about it all weekend and I realized that deep down, I've always known you weren't really in love with me. I just didn't want to see it. That's ridiculous, I protested, but the words sounded hollow even to me. Is it? He asked simply. Can you honestly tell me that you love me? That you don't resent me? That you haven't thought about what life would be like with someone else? I opened my mouth, ready to lie again, but something in his steady gaze stopped me. He already knew the truth. What was the point? Fine, I said instead, crossing my arms. So things aren't perfect, no marriages. That doesn't mean we throw everything away. I'm not throwing anything away, Nolan repeated, echoing his words from before. I'm accepting what's already gone. He slid one of the papers toward me. A separation agreement, already filled out. I think we should handle this as amicably as possible, he said. I've outlined a fair division of assets based on our prenup, the one I'd signed without much thought because I'd been so focused on the wedding. The one that protected Nolan's savings, his apartment, his car. Wait, I said, feeling the ground shift beneath me. You can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go? What about our life together? You're welcome to stay here until you find a place. Nolan said, his tone still infuriatingly reasonable. I can move to the guest room. As for our life together. He shrunk. I think we both know that was more of an arrangement than a marriage. Something inside me broke. All the fear, all the uncertainty about my future crystallized into pure rage. You think you can just decide this on your own? I shouted, you think you can just throw me away like I'm nothing? I'm not throwing you away, Clara, Nolan said, still calm. I'm setting us both free. Free? I laughed bitterly. You think I want to be free? You think anyone else is going to take care of me the way you do? As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a mistake. Nolan's expression hardened. That's the problem, isn't it? He said quietly, you never wanted a husband, you wanted a caretaker. That's not what I meant, I backpedaled quickly. I just meant. I know exactly what you meant, Nolan cut me off, and I'm done being used. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. Where was the man who would do anything to make me happy, who laughed at my jokes and forgave my moods and paid for everything without complaint? You're making a huge mistake, I said, grabbing my purse. When you realize that, don't expect me to come running back. I won't, Nolan said simply. I stormed out again, slamming the door even harder than before. In my car, I screamed at the steering wheel, hitting it until my palms stung. This couldn't be happening. Not to me, not now. I drove aimlessly for hours, replaying everything in my mind. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Who did Nolan think he was? I was the best thing that ever happened to him. Without me, he was just another boring guy with a decent job. He should be grateful I chose him. Eventually, I ended up back at Rachel's. She opened the door in pajamas, looking surprised to see me. How did it go? She asked cautiously. He wants a divorce, I said, pushing past her into the apartment. Can you believe that? Over one stupid phone call. Read, what exactly did he say? I collapsed on her couch, tears flowing again. He said he knows I don't really love him, that our marriage was just an arrangement. He already had separation papers. Ready. Oh, Clara, Rachel sighed, sitting beside me. I'm so sorry. He's going to regret this, I sniffled. He'll never find anyone as good as me. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Clara, I need to show you something. She picked up her tablet from the coffee table and tapped the screen a few times before handing it to me. It was open to some website I didn't recognize, a page full of comments. At the top was a post titled, I overheard my wife telling her friend not to settle like she did, that I was her last resort. My blood ran cold as I skimmed the post. It was our story, every detail exactly as it had happened, from Nolan's perspective. He'd written about coming home early, hearing my phone call, our confrontation, everything. The post had thousands of upvotes and hundreds of comments, almost all of them supportive of Nolan and condemning of me. Anonymous husband 34, I'd been taking care of everything, the apartment, her car, all our expenses. I thought we were building a life together, but apparently I was just a backup plan. I looked up at Rachel in shock. Did you know about this? She nodded slowly. It went viral yesterday. Jasmine sent it to me because, well, the story sounded familiar, I repeated, my voice rising. He's airing our dirty laundry online for everyone to see, and you're on his side? I'm not on anyone's side, Rachel said carefully. But Clara, the things you said about Nolan, about settling for him, they weren't very kind. It was a private conversation, I protested. Everyone vents about their spouse sometimes. This wasn't just venting, Rachel said, taking the tablet back and scrolling through the comments. You said he was your last resort, that you could have done better. How would you feel if you heard him say that about you? I stared at her, betrayal burning in my chest. I can't believe you right now. You're supposed to be my best friend. I am your best friend, Rachel said firmly, which is why I'm being honest with you. What you said hurt Nolan deeply, and now a lot of people know about it. This isn't just going to blow over. As if to confirm her words, my phone buzzed with a text from another friend. OMG, Clara, have you seen this Reddit post? Is this about you and Nolan? Then another, girl, check your Facebook messages ASAP, and another, hey, just checking if you're okay. Saw something online that seemed like it might be about you guys. My stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. Somehow, people were connecting Nolan's anonymous post to us. Our story was spreading. I was being exposed. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Friends stopped returning my calls. Colleagues avoided me at work. Even Tucker started finding excuses not to have lunch with me. I tried damage control, telling anyone who would listen that Nolan had misunderstood, that he was twisting things to make himself the victim. But the story had already spread too far. Meanwhile, Nolan seemed to be thriving. According to mutual friends, the few who still spoke to me, he'd moved into a nice new apartment, was excelling at his job with the new promotion, and had even started going to the gym regularly. He'd changed his relationship status on Facebook to single and posted a photo of himself hiking with friends, looking happier than I'd seen him in years. When I finally returned to our old apartment to collect my things, after multiple legal notices, I found most of my stuff packed in boxes in the living room. Everything I'd bought with my own money, which I realized with growing horror, wasn't much. The furniture, the electronics, even most of the kitchenware had been purchased by Nolan. The prenup I'd signed so carelessly before our wedding meant I had no claim to the apartment, to his savings, or to any of our joint assets beyond my personal belongings. I'd assumed we'd be together forever, so what did it matter whose name was on the deed? I'd been so focused on what Nolan could give me that I never bothered building anything of my own. 3 months after our separation, I was laid off from my job. Of budget cuts, they said, but I couldn't help wondering if my increasingly distracted performance or the office gossip about my personal life had played a role. With no savings of my own and no spousal support thanks to that prenup, I had no choice but to move back in with my parents at 32. 6 months after that, I saw on Instagram that Rachel was having a housewarming party. In one of the photos, I spotted Nolan chatting with a pretty brunette I didn't recognize. They weren't touching, but something in the way they looked at each other made my chest tighten. In another photo, they were laughing together, her hand on his arm. I wasn't invited to the party. The year after our separation, the divorce finalized with barely a whimper. I signed the papers in my lawyer's office alone while Nolan was apparently on vacation in Europe, according to his social media. By then, I was working at a job that paid half what my old one did, living in a tiny apartment I could barely afford and watching from the digital sidelines as my ex-husband built a new life without me. The final blow came when Nolan changed his relationship status to in a relationship with the brunette from Rachel's party, Olivia, according to her profile. She was a kindergarten teacher who volunteered at an animal shelter and ran marathons for charity. Her posts were full of genuine smiles and thoughtful comments, not carefully staged photos or cryptic status updates like mine. One night, after too much wine and self-pity, I messaged him, "Are you happy now? Was throwing everything away worth it?" His response came the next morning, "I didn't throw anything away. Clara, I finally recognized my own worth. I hope someday you find yours too." I stared at those words for a long time, something bitter and painful rising in my throat. He was right, there had never been anything real to throw away, just a man who loved me more than I deserved and a woman who was too blind to see what she had until it was gone. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Nolan hadn't come home early that day, if he hadn't overheard my true feelings. Would we still be together, him blissfully ignorant and me quietly resentful? Would I eventually have acted on my attraction to Tucker or someone like him? Would I have spent my entire life settling without realizing what I was missing? I don't have those answers. All I know is that I warned my friend not to settle like I did, and in the end, Nolan was the one who refused to settle for a marriage without love, for a wife who saw him as a last resort, and now I'm the one who's truly settled for a life far less than what I once had, far less than what I thought I deserved. The irony isn't lost on me, though I'd never admit it to anyone but myself. After all, some lessons you can only learn the hard way.